You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of The Underground Subway, a podcast that is dedicated to one thing, and that is giving you the tools and strategies needed to live a better, more successful life, a life in which you achieve your goals, reach your destiny, and do what you were born to do. No matter what obstacle you may face, this podcast is dedicated to bringing you quality and qualified guests who will share with you their expertise, their experiences in life, and their areas in which they have already achieved or have mastered to some degree, and they will share with you how you can achieve your goals. Listen, my friends, as I always say, Harriet Tubman said something that I love. She said, I could have freed a lot more slaves if only they knew that they were slaves. How many of us are living in this life and we have chains or things holding us back, and we don't even realize that we're not free? That's what this broadcast, that's what this podcast is designed to do. It is designed to reveal those things that are holding you back. And then it's up to you, my friend, to release those chains and live the best life that you can possibly live. I'm excited about my guest for this edition of the Underground Subway. His name is Jason Hobcust, and Jason is a motivator and catalyst for cultural change within organizations. He believes that connection to oneself, one's transparency, and one's passion to connect allows individuals to live a wholly, authentic, full life. He creates systems of people working to deepen their relationships to their work, their play, and ultimately our world. He presently serves as nonprofit president and CEO of NAMI, or the National Alliance of Mental Illness, of Arapahoe, Douglas counties, and is the founder of the Connection Project, a nonprofit company. The stigmas of mental health cannot be unraveled unless we begin to celebrate those who have pulled themselves back up and then some. It's time to acknowledge recovery success. That's a quote from Jason. Jason's mission is to advance human connection by embracing the conversation of fighters, of the folks whose journey from black to light gives hope to those that deserve a second or even a third chance to be the ambassadors of conversation. The present narrative about mental health is often perpetuated through sad, scary, or traumatic events, which typically overlooks individuals who are simply struggling with functional life issues. The Connection Project takes a fresh approach by focusing on those who have turned their personal struggle around to champion a community-driven cause. Through the raw focus of the individual, Jason nourishes honest conversation to birth a system of next level social responsibility. I want to welcome to the Underground Subway, Jason Hobcust. Thank you, Jason, for joining us here on the Underground Subway.
Thank you, David. The pleasure is mine. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's get into it, Jason. Your bio talks about the underlying theme of your bio is simple. It talks about mental health. And I often think about mental health, and I think about, when you reach a certain age, you look back and you say to yourself, boy, I remember a time when that term never existed, or if it did exist, it only meant one thing, that you were quote unquote crazy. So talk to us about mental health here in 2022. What is mental health? What is that? How do you define mental health?
Well, thank you for teeing it up that way. I think first and foremost, there are still many people who would still define it that way. I tend to believe that mental health is something that we all have. I mean, if you have a brain, you have mental health. Unfortunately, we don't have a system that looks at our brain and our bodies as a unit. And, as you well know, and most of your listeners can agree, you don't have a functioning body without a brain. So, to underscore that we all have mental health, I think is the starting point. Secondarily, what often happens, I have noticed, is we lump mental health and mental illness in the same bucket. And that's where the things change a little bit, and recognizing that mental illness is like any other illness, something that we can be affected through in the course of life. That can be an illness like any other illness. and would be treated and addressed in a way you might treat or address cancer or diabetes or any other sort of malady that people live with. But I think it's important to point out the differences.
Wow, that's amazing. I never thought about the difference between mental health, mental illness being lumped together. Jason, do you think that oftentimes I'll paint this scenario? Do you think that because I can have I remember there was a time when you didn't want to do physical labor, you would simply say that my back hurt, or if I was in a car accident, I would say I injured my back. And they would always say, well, there's no way to really prove a back injury. Do you think that we're living in a time as the mental health issue is being revealed more, or talked about more, that people use that as a scapegoat?
I don't know about people using it as a scapegoat. I think that that's a case by case basis, but I do think, by and large, with what we've been through the last 2.5 years, that people are struggling more, really at an alarming rate. And I think through that struggle, we are recognizing that more people have been impacted, and their mental health specifically seems to be impacted. And I think that people are not afforded the luxury or allow themselves the luxury to detach and recharge quite in the way that we may require, given everything that's happening in the world today. We may need a little more downtime than we've allowed ourselves the luxury of recognizing.
Wow, that's interesting. More downtime. Well, before we really get into it, I want to really dig into it in the short time that we do have, because
Sure.
time will definitely fly. What are some of the signs or symptoms or things that we need to look at to recognize about mental health?
I think universally, I mean, have you become less motivated? Do you feel like you're, less excited to do things in your day-to-day course of life? Are there things that, demotivate you, so to speak? Are you sleeping more? Are you not engaging with your friends or your loved ones? Do you not feel as connected in your workplace or your work life, in your relationships? Really the things that could be leading indicators are, what is the energy and the effort that you're bringing to the things that you're involved in? And if they seem to have a lackluster filter over them, maybe there's some things going on that are worth a deeper look. That to me is kind of a starting point for most people.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're saying that mental health, having mental health issues doesn't mean that I am really just depressed. It could be something as simple as I'm finding myself more sluggish, or, and I would think that that would be a physical issue. How can mental health be if I'm just not, you said not motivated?
Yeah, it certainly could be a physical issue, and you certainly should work with your medical provider to determine that it is in fact not that. But I mean, the reality is what we often look is, most of us go through what I like to call life transition issues. There are things that happen in the course of our lives: loss of a job, loss of a loved one, relationship, death of a pet, etc., that can set us back. And we may have seasons in our lives that are not our ideal or best, the best ways that we show up or how we wish that we had. And I think that there's an opportunity to give ourselves a pass of grace in some of those more lower functioning times in our lives. And for many people, those can turn into extended periods that I think should require a closer look. I mean, do you have bad sleep hygiene? Are you doing what you need to do to take care of yourself? I mean, your personal routines. Are you brushing your teeth and taking a shower regularly? Putting on clean clothes. Have you kind of let things fall by the wayside that you used to be more interested in maintaining or taking care of? I think, again, on a case by case basis for each person, I think you have to look at, have things shifted in your life? And, really from that perspective, are there some areas that might need attention or a closer look at?
Wow, you are really blowing my mind with this, Jason. Let me ask you this question, and this
Sure.
relates to myself, and I'm sure a lot of others. We're approaching the holiday season on the calendar, and for me, I lost my mom the 2 days before, around the Christmas season.
Okay.
And so whenever we get to the holiday season, sometimes, or even, periodically, I'll think about my mother and I'll begin to get sad. Can we classify how we handle grief as a part of our mental health?
Absolutely. And grief is one of those things that there is no prescriptive amount of time that any of us grieves. I think that, feelings are one of those things. You feel how you feel until you don't. Now, are there things that you can do to actively shift those feelings or take action to help yourself in times of grief? Of course. But, the fact of the matter is, the brain, and I think this is why mental health has struggled to, maybe have the same prescriptive diagnosis, across individuals, because it can look different in anybody. What you're struggling with may affect me differently if I'm struggling with the same thing. In this case, the loss of a loved one or parents. And I just want to go back and underscore, in holidays, even under the best of circumstances, without a loss of a loved one, can be stressful for people. And, if we're estranged from our families or don't have the best relationships, I mean, there are many things that happen in our lives that can become setbacks for us, or maybe we don't show up in the way that we wished we did, or in the way that we know we have the capacity to. But I think it's important to recognize during those times that maybe there's some additional supports that you need to give yourself to be better prepared to navigate.
Wow. I want to read a quote to you, and I want you to expound on this quote for me, Jason.
Okay.
The quote says, quote, the stigmas of mental health cannot be unraveled unless we begin to celebrate those who have pulled themselves back up and then some. It's time to acknowledge recovery success. And that's your quote, and I want you to explain it.
Yeah, I think mental health recovery specifically, somebody who is actively working to recover from mental health conditions, I don't think it's different than any other kind of recovery. I think it's an active process. I think there are ebbs and flows. There are times that we're going to do that better than others. And if we liken it to alcoholism or drug addiction, I mean, for many people in recovery, they go in and out of recovery a few times before they actually have sustainable recovery. I think mental health can be the same way. Again, recognizing if you've tried something and it didn't work, it doesn't mean that nothing will work. So having a willingness to pull yourself back up and say, okay, that didn't work. I'm still struggling. I'm going to try something else and see if that works. You may have to do that several times before you find the thing that works for you. And I just, want to highlight that journey is worth it. People don't have to struggle categorically, in an unending way, but it does take an active process of doing your own work and figuring out what works for you. I can't tell you what's going to work for you any more than I can tell you what's going to work for somebody else. But I mean, I've seen by and large that the people who are willing to show up for themselves and take the next step to support themselves tend to have a better time in sustained recovery.
That being said, Jason, you mentioned it's no different from alcoholism. In alcohol, if a person goes into recovery, when they're out of recovery, or when they've returned back into the norms of society, they often have a support group that they attend.
Right.
They attend a meeting of a support group, and they sit around the room and they'll talk to one another. Hey, my name is David and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, David, how do you think it's important or useful to have a support group for those that struggle with mental health issues?
I have led mental health support groups for the better part of a decade, and I think it certainly can be helpful. Again, I think it's different for everybody else. I mean, that AA model or addiction support model that you mentioned a minute ago is not for everyone. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution, but I do think that there is an element of being able to recognize that we're not alone. Because look, so many times things will happen in our lives and we get stuck in our own head and can really loop around the fact that we're the only person that's ever dealt with this or struggled with this. And whether it's shame or stigma that keeps someone, just short of reaching out to somebody who might understand or can help them make a difference. I just think the starting point is recognizing you are not alone. There is somebody who has been through what you're going through, that has seen the other side of it, and can perhaps lend an ear or some guidance around how to do it better. I frankly think that's the baseline of connection, recognizing you're not alone. And then in those times of struggle, a willingness to reach out to somebody who may understand.
So what is the struggle of, you mentioned reaching out to someone that may understand. Talk to us about the possible stigma or the shame that is attached to it.
Again, I think it's different for everybody, but the reality is if you're having a bad time or something you've been through is has really set you down a course that doesn't look like a life that you love anymore, being able to reach out to somebody, whether it's a support group or a therapist or a coach or a trusted friend or loved one. I, I just think from my own perspective, and I have my own mental health journey that I've been involved in for quite some time. I know that the times that I am willing to get out of my own head and share my story with somebody else, I often gain different perspective that may look like nothing I would have come up with on my own. And that's usually helpful. Now, again, I don't think you have to shout it from the rooftops with everybody in your circle,
Mhm.
but most of us have that trusted friend or resource. And if we don't, there are places to go and seek out support, like my organization, NAMI. I mean, a big part of what we do is offer support groups for people who are struggling with mental health conditions. There is help available if you're willing to seek it out.
Talk to us about NAMI. How did that start, and what does that consist
So,
of?
so NAMI is a national organization that started around the kitchen table in the late 70s by family members that had loved ones who were affected by chronic or persistent mental illness. And they really wanted to be able to form a network to support, themselves as well as others. And it blossomed into an organization that now has representation in every state. And the actual support, education, and outreach programs happens at an affiliate level. I happen to lead one of the largest affiliates in the state of Colorado. And really, what we offer people is mental health education courses. We offer mental health support groups for family members and loved ones, as well as peers who are affected by mental health. And then we do outreach in the community, at different events throughout the year. And frankly, that exists in every state in the country. What I will say, because of the pandemic, many organizations moved to online support resources, my organization included. So really, there's no geographic barrier that precludes somebody from getting more connected in a time of struggle. But help is available.
Mhm. So, what are some of I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, it's amazing when you look at, we work a job and payday arrives, and you're excited that it's payday. But then when you look at your bank account, you'll see $20 went here and $10 went to this subscription, and this company's going to get their subscription, and your video company's going to get
Oh, for
theirs.
sure.
And you look up and you say, "Well, wait a minute. Why am I short $200 or $300?" Well, if a person wants to get help, how can we get what we call big help or really significant help to improve our mental health without having to delete our bank account?
Right. So the support resources I just offered through DAMI, they are always offered free. So we offer those free of charge to anybody who wants to partake. Aside from that, I mean, I think the starting point is, do you have health insurance? If you do, look into what your health insurance provides as far as mental health support. If you have that available to you, you should avail yourself to using it. If you don't, and money or resources are limited. I know there are many people who work in the community on a sliding scale that will meet people at a place of what they can afford. If you don't have health insurance and are perhaps on government assisted insurance like Medicaid, Medicaid is a really great tool, and they do provide mental health resources, inside that system. Again, it's often offered through a community mental health center and or inside a provider system. But again, it's going to take a little research to take a look and
Mhm.
see what's available to you. And I think most people would be surprised. There is more help available for limited or no cost than what they can imagine. I don't think the belief that you just have to spend a lot of money to get help. I don't think that that's realistic for many people. And as long as we're talking about subscriptions, I mean, there's many subscription services that people can sign up for today, that offer therapeutic support or help either in a group and or in a private one-on-one setting that can often be at a lower cost. So, the beautiful thing about technology, while I don't know that it's necessarily connected us in the way we may perceive it has, it certainly has offered us some opportunities to where we don't have to get in our car and drive somewhere to go sit in a chair for an hour and talk about what's going on in our lives. And I think that's a
Right.
benefit for a lot of people.
Right. So if we remove that obstacle of the financial aspect of it, what do you think would be a person's greatest obstacle from getting the help that they need?
Their willingness to show up and take a next step.
Wow.
I think a lot of us get stuck in our loop. I'm going to call it a loop for a long time, and we don't take action as quickly or as expediently as we could or should, and we end up causing ourselves more pain and suffering. Now, for many, they get something out of that, which is, to them may be a benefit for them. But I don't think that, in my experience of doing this work for quite some time now, I don't think that there is a lot that holds people back in short of their willingness to show up and do the work.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So,
Well,
tell
that's
us,
most things in
yeah,
life, really, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It is.
I guess it depends how bad you want it. I mean, I kind of believe change is one of those things that it's either too painful or you're being forced to. I think this is kind of the same thing. If it's too painful for you to continue doing life the way that you've done it, you kind of have your answer. Are you willing to take a next step or not?
Right. Well, Jason, on you during your time that you've been working with in the mental health field, and as you mentioned, dealing with it yourself, have you seen a change, increase, or have you seen the mental health area, quote unquote? Have you seen, I guess, an impact or an improvement in people's awareness? Because if we don't have an awareness, we'll never get the help that we need.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I think the pandemic really opened the door for people to recognize that they were struggling at alarming rates. I mean, look, we were pulled out of, quote unquote normal life and
Hmm.
forced to adapt into being at home, being isolated, being detached, working from home, working on platforms that we had never maybe worked on. I think that had an effect and a toll on people, certainly on their mental health. I think people have reached out about that struggle at more profound rates than they ever did before. And I do think that because of that, collective struggle we've all been through, I think more people are willing to talk about what they're going through. So I will say, over the course of the last decade and certainly the last 2.5 years, I think we've made major advancements. And I think we also have seen the access to resources become more available to people to meet them where they are, right where they are, which may be at home in their car, you know,
Hmm.
wherever, that doesn't look like the traditional system, of how it might have been before. If you got to make an appointment, get in your car and drive there to take advantage of that. And frankly, I think that's a good thing. We have a long way to go, though. I don't
So,
think mental
right,
health is just
right,
something people wake up and want to start talking about.
right.
I think
Well,
I think
right,
until it affects you.
right. Final question, Jason. I don't know how to word this, so I guess I'll just spit it out.
Okay.
You have a family member or a close friend that struggles with, let's just say, bad breath. It is it is difficult to go to a friend and say, you'd really need to get that checked out.
Right.
Give us a real simple answer on how I have a family member or friend that I recognize the signs of mental health. How do I talk to them to get them the help that they need?
I think it depends on what your relationship with that person is. But if it's a relationship that is close to you and that you care about, I will say, even if you have fear about asking, or saying, I've noticed that you seem detached or less engaged, or that you're struggling, or you're not taking care of yourself, and I'm concerned about you. Is there something I can do to help, or would you like to talk about it? Most people
Mhm.
just want a soft place to land. And I have
Right.
found by and large, we show up in conversations assuming somebody wants us to fix something for them. And the reality is most people just want a place to be able to share and to be heard without judgment. So, and know that there are going to be times that you have those conversations that somebody might get upset from with you. But I think if you approach it with, in a kind way from a place of love,
Hmm.
I hope that plays out for most people, that they recognize, hey, this person wants something that's better for me. But I can't tell you every time you're going to have that conversation, somebody's going to meet you with, oh, yes, I'm struggling. And oh, I want to talk about it right now. They may need to walk away and think about
Right.
it. And, maybe they haven't fully admitted what's going on for themselves. But again, just keep chipping away. And I think come at it from a place of kindness and love and concern. And, I just believe if you do that, sooner or later it may make a difference, or you beat your head up against the wall enough with somebody and kind of turn it over to the universe. But I certainly don't think when it comes to mental health that is a topic that should be off limits for us reaching out if we see somebody struggling.
Tell us how we can get in touch with you or possibly get our hands on any material that you have, etc.
Yeah, so my two websites for NAMI is NAMI, NAMI, ADCO, ADCO.org. And then my for-profit organization is Connection Project. The website for that is realpeoplereallife.org. And you can find me under my name, Jason Hobcust, or Connection Project on any of the handles, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc., and get information there. I'm pretty easy to find and super responsive if somebody wants to reach out.
All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the Underground Subway. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us.
David, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for using this platform to advance the conversation.
Thank you. Well, my friends, we're out of time for this edition of the Underground Subway, but I want to give a special thank you to our guest, Jason Hopkins, for all of that valuable information that he has poured out. As my grandmother used to say, get all you can and can all you get. I want to thank him again and thank you all for joining us. I do not take it for granted that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to join the Underground Subway. I hear the music playing in the background, which means this train is pulling into the station. We are arriving at Purpose Boulevard and Destiny Avenue. Now we've got to stop and we've got to let you off, but there will be another edition of the Underground Subway coming real soon. Again, I want to thank Jason Hopkins for joining us, and I thank you all for joining us, whether you're listening at work on your iPad or whether you're listening on the treadmill or in the car, wherever you are. I appreciate your support, and hopefully we've shared something with you to make life a little better for you and for your family. Well, we've got to go, but I want to thank you again, and we'll see you next time right here on the Underground Subway. But before we go, I want to challenge you. Tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to find a mirror, and I want you to look yourself right in the eye, and I want you to ask yourself a question. Today, did I do something to work toward my destiny? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. We've got no more time to waste. I'm David Austin, host of the Underground Subway. I'll see you next time right here.